Like, I do think that in Germany, it's still a great place to start up. There are subsidies out there for like young founders who don't come from a rich background.
Today's guest on the Guten Tag podcast is Daniel Hanemann. I want to start a business, but I don't know how much I can raise on an angel round. How much did you raise back then?
I think what I also criticize about the startup scene is what are the headlines that you read in TechCrunch and Gründerszene? Oh, raised this many million.
Exactly.
So a lot of the time, it's also like people judge how successful it is based on how much did you raise. That's not a goal in itself. I moved from a city with 8 million people to a city with 8,000 people. Moving to Germany for the first time, especially if you're extremely young, where some kids just don't have filters, especially spoiled kids. Part of my French, but assholes at the university that have lived on the countryside, have never seen a foreign person before. There were comments, I didn't do great in the first year of university. And then having to listen to people say like, oh, but I thought Asians are so good at maths, is just like, that was tough.
Today's guest in the Guten Tag podcast is Daniel Hanemann. He is an entrepreneur and founder of Wundertax. He is half Chinese and half German, and we discuss a lot about the challenges and his upbringing in a binational household. Also, he shared his experience moving to Germany at the age of 18 and landing in a new country where he has never lived, alone, and going to one of the most prestigious universities in Germany. In this episode, you can learn how to build the right product for your company, how to start a company as a non-EU member in Germany, and how can you get the best tax refund, and more. If you haven't subscribed to this podcast, please consider subscribing. Click that button. You have no idea how much that helps. My name is Luardo.
And I'm Benji.
And this is the Guten Tag podcast. Now, let's dive into the conversation. Daniel Hanemann, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Happy to be here.
Cool.
Happy to have you here.
You were born in Hong Kong, and so your mother, I understand, is Taiwanese, and your father was German. How was that experience of growing in this bicultural family?
Well, for me, growing up, it was the most normal thing in the world, of course. As a kid, I found it weird when I met people who are like, your parents speak the same language, same mother tongue. I mean, also growing up in Hong Kong, I went to the German school. So I went to, so it started in kindergarten. Actually, I went first to Montessori, and then we moved to Germany, spent a year in kindergarten, in Düsseldorf. I spent a year in kindergarten in Düsseldorf, but then going back to Germany when I was, I think, 3, going back to Hong Kong, when I was 3, went to the German Swiss International School in Hong Kong.
Okay.
It was a lot of people who had like similar backgrounds like me. So it was always like...
And what language did you talk at home?
Oh, it's all 3. We used to speak all 3. So my mom doesn't speak German. My dad doesn't speak Mandarin.
Okay.
So they spoke English with each other. And me and my brother, we speak German. And with my mom, we speak Mandarin.
Okay.
With my dad, German.
And then how long do you stay in Hong Kong?
I stayed in Hong Kong until I was 18. So I attended German Swiss until I was 18. I did the German Abitur. And I mean, in Hong Kong, it's also quite, I think the thing that surprises people the most is like when I meet other Hong Kongers, it's always like, oh, I'm from Hong Kong as well, and they're always like starting to speak Cantonese with me. But I don't speak Cantonese because my mom was always very like, she wanted me to learn Mandarin, her mother tongue. So we always spoke Mandarin, which is close enough to Cantonese that most Hong Kongers speak Mandarin or English.
Yeah.
So
that's the official language in Hong Kong.
The official languages are English and Chinese. So this is intentionally ambiguous.
Okay, yeah, because Chinese is kind of a broad.
Exactly, yeah. And Cantonese is a dialect, officially speaking. So, I mean, there is written Cantonese like on WhatsApp and stuff like that, but you have to imagine it kind of like there's no official system. So it's a bit more like if Swiss people write Swiss German to each other.
So it would be as different, like Mandarin and Cantonese is as different as Swiss German and Hoch German?
Like I would say as the deepest Swiss German.
Okay.
It's more like German and Swedish different.
Okay.
It's huge. It's very large.
All right. Okay. You can see some roots of the language. They're similar, but you cannot follow a full conversation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. But how did your parents meet?
They met in Taiwan. So my mom was working as F&B manager at a hotel in Taipei.
Okay.
My dad was a buyer in Hong Kong. So he worked for Metro. So, the cash and carry company. Back then, it was also Mediamarkt, Saturn, Galeria Kaufhof. They've split up everything. It's a whole tragedy. Interview my dad for that. But, and he was like going to Taiwan because Taiwan had actually, he went to Hong Kong first because there were lots of factories there. Crazy to think about it because in the, 80s or what, he didn't go to China that often. The production, there were still factories in Hong Kong.
Okay.
And also factories in Taiwan. Now only like semiconductors are in Taiwan, and in Hong Kong it's only finance.
Okay.
But back then, like he wouldn't really go to China to buy things and to do purchasing for companies.
Okay.
So he went to Taiwan and met my mom there.
And then they decided to stay in Hong Kong and raise a family there. Well, at least for most. Well, you were 1 year in Dusseldorf, but then the rest of the years there.
Exactly. I also attended German Swiss because it was always the chance that, if my dad like loses his job or like, gets a promotion in Germany, or, whatever other reason, then I could go back to the German school system.
And I think in there it's not so easy to find another job if you're not from there, right? Or how is it the culture?
Well, Hong Kong business world is there are a lot of expats there.
Okay.
So he actually did switch jobs in Hong Kong.
Okay.
So, but yes, if you lose your job, a lot of the times Germans or general expats do go back to their home country to start looking there again. But of course, like there are also a lot of people that switch while they're in Hong Kong or find something new there.
Okay.
Yeah.
You decided to move or what happened?
So I graduated from Abitur, from the German school, and it was kind of always the plan. I've never really, it's funny if you look back, right? Like I've never questioned it. It was always the plan to go back if I say back, it doesn't even make sense. But like it was always, so we spent every summer in Germany visiting relatives, spent every Chinese New Year in Taiwan visiting relatives.
Yeah.
But like having followed the school system, and you have to really imagine it's like it was all German teachers. We had everything in German. Like if you couldn't go to the German stream, if you didn't have like a German passport or like German
roots,
educational roots, like you had to be native.
Okay.
So we went. So it was always like also with the teachers and everything, like it was always clear kind of that I would study in Germany at one point.
Yeah. Okay.
And I never questioned it. And looking back, it's like, why didn't I even like consider something else?
Yeah.
Right. But
and then and you applied here directly to study on a university, or what was the intention?
Yes, exactly. I was in Hong Kong and basically still doing my Abitur and thinking about like where do I want to study.
Yeah.
And I went to this university expo, and there was one German university, which was University of Freiburg, which is where close to where my dad's from. So I asked them like, hey, like what courses do you offer? Like I'm interested, in business, maybe something like engineering or IT, something like that. And they were like, yeah, no, we don't have that.
Okay.
or like, no, that's not our focus. And then I was like, okay, well, that was a short conversation.
Yeah.
I talked to a university in Switzerland, so St. Gallen. And essentially, I the only other thing I had was talking to my classmates, what they were looking at and what their parents recommended them, or their, what they've heard of, and from rankings, from magazines and internet research.
Which university did you apply back then?
I applied for Mannheim, WHU, and St. Gallen. which were the three business universities.
I mean, the one from Mannheim is one of the best I have heard, right?
Yeah. So Mannheim, like it's normally like Mannheim's the best public one, WH was the best private one, and St. Gallen is the best one in Switzerland. But it also depends what you want to end up with. So Mannheim has a lot of people that go into more into industry. WH was more like into, startups and smaller companies, Zalando and Rocket Internet and everything. They had a reputation.
Exactly. Well,
St. Gallen is bankers. A lot of bankers go there.
Well, the WHU is quite an elite university, right? It's private, and from what I hear, all of the founders, all of the internet industry is built by people who are graduated from the WHU. Or isn't it right? Yeah.
Well, not all.
Not all.
Like
many of them.
It's definitely a name that's sprung up, and sometimes a lot to the detriment of people who didn't go there. It's definitely like there's, especially when I speak to younger graduates now, like it's the focus of the university on startups is huge.
Okay.
So they also do like extra courses and like invite people to tell them about their founding story and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Whilst when I was there, it was very like open. You could, they had company presentations by like banks, by consultancies, by different multinational companies, corporations, local companies. So,
but I imagine that in that university, there's a very specific type of people, right? A very specific type of Germans, right? Like I imagine like it's a very wide university, isn't it?
Yeah. Safe to say, like, I mean, it was, it's a private university, so you had to pay tuition to get in. So there was a tendency that people come from wealthier backgrounds. And in Germany, there's a strong correlation there.
And for you, was it like different suddenly to be in a place where everyone was maybe more homogeneous and you were different there?
100%. I mean, the thing is, like, I wasn't the only one. Don't get me wrong. Like it was relatively diverse. It was only 20% female quota, I think.
Okay.
But I think for me, the most shocking thing was, culture shock was for me a huge thing, right? Like I moved from a city with 8 million people to a city with 8,000 people.
Okay.
That coupled with, like moving to Germany for the very first time and like living on your own. I just turned 18.
Yeah.
Right. And suddenly you have to deal with all the stuff, like all the things that you guys probably also talk about in the podcast, like, Anmeldung and how to buy a train ticket,
tax of the radio,
taxes,
exactly,
right? Like so opening a bank account, all of that. Visa I didn't have, of course, but like all of those things that give you headaches. I had to deal with 18 whilst being in a very small town, and then a very stressful university because it's everything but easy.
Because it's a high level of quality or
very
stress.
High, very high level of stress, definitely. And then at the same time, like I have great friends from that university, like a lot of people also with different backgrounds, migration backgrounds especially. I think the female quota they fixed by now, but like also a lot of people with like migration backgrounds. But then there were also some part of my French, but assholes at the university that have like lived on the countryside, have never seen a foreign person before, like very hyperbole. So there were comments. There were definitely.
What kind of comments?
I mean, like
racist jokes,
racist jokes or something. Like, I mean, it was very far, like racist jokes, of course, that were just like, wow, can you come up with something more original than talking about, like
Chinese stereotypes or something like that.
Stereotypes. And frankly, also like, when I had I didn't do great in the first year of university, right? Like all of the stuff that I explained to you earlier, and then expecting to have good grades.
Yeah.
Like I didn't have great and then having to listen to people say like, oh, but I thought Asians are so good at maths, is just like, Jesus Christ, fuck off. You know, like that's the worst timing. And I mean, but like they were far and few between, they were few and far between, but they were also just like racist, all out racist shit, right? That people did say. Yeah. I don't want this to reflect on the university. There were just like a few individual assholes that were there. But no, like, I mean, moving to Germany for the first time, especially if you're extremely young, where some kids just don't have filters, especially the spoiled kids. Exactly. Don't have filters. That was tough. Yeah, that wasn't great.
Now I see other challenges, because when I moved here, I thought that I was too old to move to another country. I moved with 27.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was too old.
Really?
Yeah. I felt, because I felt like most of my friends were in Mexico.
Yeah.
I have grounds there. So like I have a lot of things there that you develop with time.
Yeah.
And now that I see another point from somebody that moves younger, they have other challenges so the integration is also hard.
Yeah, I mean, and also not a lot of people just relate it to me, right? Like, you know, Roman, from my colleague from Wundertax, he moved to Passau, which was a huge university town, you know, and there were a lot from Peru. And there were lots of people from Latin America that he, you know, like where he kind of had a community from the beginning, and also a lot of people studied culture sciences there, so they also wanted to, you know, he told me that's how he got all his dates, by practicing Spanish with the German girls. But like for me, I went there, and it was basically like, you know, not a lot of people could relate to the experience that I had growing up, you know, like also half culturally in a German school, and then
because you were half German, half, well, when you say half Taiwanese, or you would say half Chinese, I don't know politically how.
I mean, my grandparents came from China,
so you would say half Chinese, half German. But coming here, can you really relate to the Germans, or can you relate to the Chinese community? So I guess it was like some sort of void in that sense.
Exactly. Like, I mean, the thing is, the misconception that a lot of people have is like, oh, you're half, you must be, you know, like both.
Yeah. Have the best of both.
You have the best of both worlds. But the reality is, most of the time that, you know, like Chinese people, I mean, Taiwanese people don't really consider me Taiwanese because I never lived there. Hong Kong people, like I said earlier, I don't speak Cantonese. German people, you know, before 18, I also didn't live there ever. You know, so there were also like just cultural differences that I've experienced, and just like, I don't know, the also common things growing up, you know, like the different videos, the different music, like that you experience. Like, of course, we also had a bit of German culture at our school, like pop culture, but also not to the same extent. Like, me and my friends in Hong Kong, we spoke English with each other.
Okay.
Although we were all Germans, right?
Interesting. And what were those things that, for example, in terms of cultural differences, that annoyed you the most when you arrived to Germany? What was strange at the beginning?
I mean, what I found very, like, I mean, this is super cliche, but like, just everything has a process, everything has a bureaucracy, everything is, you do by the book. Whilst in Hong Kong, it's also sometimes like, I don't know, like you could, if you don't have some kind of document or something, you can still talk to the people and say like, hey, I'm going to bring it afterwards or something. You know, like, or when I pick up the document, and they would always say, yeah, sure. You know, like there was always like some room of this discussion,
flexibility.
or flexibility is the better word.
Okay.
So Germans being very like, no flexibility.
Yeah. Okay. That's quite a hard one. And then you made it through your studies. Yeah. And then you picked a strong focus then on entrepreneurship, or what was your focus then after your study?
Yeah, after I studied, I mean, for me, it was like kind of first the gap year, but then I stumbled more or less. I was in Hong Kong at my mom's, and I was thinking about. So first, I was actually like, I worked at a company. They did like drinking powders, which was the dad of a friend of mine. And then it was great because I was in Darmstadt, I was in Hong Kong, I was in Chicago, like I was all around organizing stuff for them. But it was a chaos, right? Like it was, it was all over the place. So I was also like, I don't know, this is not exactly the entrepreneurship that I imagined.
Yeah.
I went back to Hong Kong and then I waited for my master's, but my friend called me and was like, hey, I'm here at Food Panda Hong Kong, which is food delivery.
Okay, yeah.
I need somebody to do finance because it's a mess here. Can you do it? I was like, sure, I'll come by tomorrow. And then like 2 weeks later, the Asia boss came by and was like, this guy can speak Chinese, can speak German. Like he's from WHU, like he obviously already did fix a lot of things. Like, why isn't he here full time? So I stayed there.
Oh, cool.
In Hong Kong and built up Food Panda as well. Did as CFO, head of finance.
Wow. Okay, C-level right away.
Yeah. So that was stumbled.
But then your multicultural background helped a lot
really
because
helped,
that, like knowing Chinese, knowing speaking German, speaking English, knowing both cultures, it's the perfect combination, right?
It absolutely helped. Yeah. 100%. No, and then afterwards, like I came to Berlin because for me it was startups, you know, like that's what I want to do.
I mean, there's where the main operation from Food Panda was, right? From Rocket Internet.
Yeah, it was in Berlin.
Yeah.
Also, the Food Panda headquarters themselves was in Berlin.
Yeah.
Which in hindsight is very interesting because they were managing everything from Berlin.
Yeah.
And their main businesses were India and Hong Kong and Singapore.
Interesting. If you have enjoyed this conversation till this point, please consider subscribing. You have no idea how much that helps this project.
You can like, rate, or review wherever you listen podcast, and we can't wait to connect with you in future episodes.
When you came up, when did you say, I don't want to work for somebody else, I want to start my own thing?
Yeah, so I basically, me and a classmate at WHU, we had, so essentially in a lot of university students in Germany know this, like there are these seminars teaching you how to deduct your taxes, how to deduct your study costs from your taxes. So you get a tax credit that you can, you know, use the next year when you actually start working. And there's this company that sells insurances that does like these seminars, and they teach you what you can deduct, but they don't teach you how you can deduct because their goal is just to present you this and then sell you an insurance afterwards that you don't need.
Okay.
Right? So me and that classmate, we were like, okay, this is kind of like a missed opportunity, right? Like why don't we like build something where students can actually hand in their tax return and get that tax credit. So that's how we came up with Studentensteuererklärung.
Okay.
And we built the first version in like an Excel, and then we gave it to freelancers, and then we tested it with students, with like potential customers. It was for free at the beginning.
Okay.
And it went completely viral. Like they started sharing it on Facebook. They started sharing it like in Facebook, their own Facebook groups and everything. And it just went completely viral. So we were like, holy shit, there's a business here and there's an opportunity here.
It was a Excel template. Would you build it to start, or what do you mean by an Excel?
Yeah, it was an Excel template.
And they would just start sharing it. And
no. So sorry, we gave it to freelancers, to tech freelancers
to develop it. So it was the base, kind of like a formulary, I can imagine.
Exactly, just formulas.
Yeah.
Okay.
You give it to the developers, and the developers do the magic.
Built a proper form with it.
Okay.
That actually had the calculation and actually translated it to the API of the government. So the government has an API that basically that's...
You can send the data.
You can send the data to.
So that first version was basically a page where you register and then all the data will be sent to this...
to the government.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then was that a very basic version of what you have now. So it was basically an MVP what you built back then.
Exactly. It was a complete MVP that we built back then. I mean, again, we didn't charge any money. It was for free. And then we actually like raised money. And then we went out and we were like, hey, this business is, or not business, this product seems to really like resonate with people.
You had how's it called, a product market fit by that point?
I would say back then we had product solution fit because we didn't earn a single euro yet.
Okay.
So we had product solution fit and we were able to be like,
sorry, I'll interrupt. Is that a real term, product solution fit?
Yeah, it's a real term.
What is the difference with the product market fit and product solution fit? Just to get a bit more insights on that.
I mean, I'm not like maybe don't quote me on this, but like in my understanding, the first step is basically the product solution fit is in ideation. You always think about like, what problem do I solve, right? And when you solve the problem for customers where you're like, hey, or for users actually, but at that point you're like, hey, does my student tax return form solve your problem? And they use it and then submit their tax return. I'm like, yeah, that worked.
Okay.
That's product solution fit. Product market fit is if you ask them to pay afterwards.
Okay, so the difference is if you get money or not.
Well, or if people is willing to pay for a solution.
Okay.
One step more, but like people willing to pay enough for you to actually support your business, in whatever form that may be. If it's a one man show, or if it's like a big company, because you need so many people, right? So the question is also like, for instance, like, because we talked about deliveries, right? Getir and Gorilla, they just left the German market because they're so unprofitable, right? Like a lot of people from the startup scene have always said like they're just so ridiculously unprofitable. They will never have the scale. The scale doesn't exist for them to reach product market fit to support their business. Right? So that's in my understanding, the difference between product market fit and product solution fit.
I understand, Right? And then with that solution, with the proof of concept, you went out to look for investors.
Exactly. So by then we went out to investors and we found a few angel investors that believed in the idea, and then we basically rolled out the solution from Studentensteuererklärung. We launched a tax tool for police officers, for soldiers, for teachers, of course, also for expats. So a very simple tool. And then we were like, okay, let's launch one for the general masses, right? Because at some point, people didn't respond anymore, right? Like if we did like engineer or developer tax return, you'd be like, huh, what's the difference to like a normal, like another person working a salaried job, right? And what's the difference? So we noticed that, and we did then we were like, okay, we have the Arbeitnehmersteuererklärung, but that's kind of clunky, right? So then we were like, okay, we need a brand.
Maybe good for SEO, maybe.
Yeah, we still have the domain, but
you have no brand for to say.
It's not a brand, so that's how we started. That's how we like renamed it into Wundertax and started building Wundertax as the general tool where people can. Also now, if you go to our tool, you select what job you have, right? You can of course also select the language, but you select which job you have, and then the tool basically shows like students, police officers, or the general one.
Is it possible to ask you in that first round, because I always wonder, I want to start a business, but I don't know how much I can raise on an angel round. How much did you raise back then?
I think 150,000 euros.
Okay. Yeah. That would give you a runway for what, 6 months or?
I mean, the thing is like, it's all fairy dust, right? Like there's no formula.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's a lot of people, when it comes to how much should I raise, how much can I raise, etc. Like I always try to give the answer, like saying like, okay, how much do you need to raise to prove your next point? to prove the next milestone.
Okay.
So for us, it was very clear that we raised that money to prove that we can also, like roll it out to different target groups, right? And roll it out to the broader market and scale and find that product market fit that we were talking about.
Okay.
Right. And then, we talked to advisors. Originally we only wanted to have like 50 or so, or even just 100. But then we looked at the business plan. We were like, okay, then we can hire one extra person to speed up, SEO or content.
Yeah.
So we just did that. We just started, we got in a little bit more to prove more as well.
Yeah.
But of course, if you raise too much too early, without anything, you have to sell much more stocks. So you sell much more proportion. So it's really like that balance. How much can I raise? How much should I raise to prove the next point? And is it like too much that I don't have enough percentage for later rounds,
Because in every other round, you will still dilute more your...
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. So you need to have still... You cannot give the full cake to one for very little.
Yeah. There's more to it as well, right? Like how much percentages, how many people do you want to have on your cap table? Cap table is basically the names of the people, the shareholders. How many people you want to have on it? Do they bring any extra value? So such as like, coaching, or do they have any niche value, niche knowledge?
What they call smart money sometimes.
Smart money, yeah.
Smart money, yeah. Exactly. I have a question there in terms of starting your own business and bringing people to bring their money to invest. Does it feel sometimes that when you raise money, you start a company because you want to be independent, and when you raise money, then you have now like a boss, in a way.
100%.
Yeah. How does that take away a little bit of the fun of entrepreneurship or not?
It's a different game. Like we didn't raise money to be independent, or at least I didn't start a company to be independent. I started the company because it worked and it made sense. And I saw, at the beginning, people were still calling us, and everyone, when they called us, they were like, "Oh, thank you guys, right? For what you're doing." So there's a lot of we're helping a lot of people with Wundertax, right? We're helping a lot of people to file their taxes, and I think long term, most company or founder motivations fail because their reasoning is not, they don't believe in the product. They're not passionate about the product, right?
They just do it because of the money they could get.
There
eventually.
are people that do it for the money. There are people that do it solely for the independence, etc. But there are a lot of very successful founders that only did it or did their early businesses for money, right? That I'm not saying it doesn't work, but that's not what I'm doing it for. Right? I do feel like
and normally these people already have money.
Sometimes, yeah. But regarding your question, you will have a boss then. The thing is, what I also criticize about the startup scene is, what are the headlines that you read in TechCrunch, in Gründerszene, in Finance Forward, whatever? What are the headlines you read? It's always raised this many million.
Exactly.
Right? So a lot of the time, it's also like a mark of
how
honor,
successful.
A badge of exactly. People judge how successful it is based on how much did you raise.
Yeah, it's like the other day we were talking also, but with art, how much money people pay on an auction of art. That's what being applauded. How much someone paid for it, but not the art itself. Yeah. So
but I get why it's like a proxy, right? People, it's because it's quantifiable. It's impressive numbers. It's large, so people do use it. But it shouldn't. I think that's also what I try to tell people if they start out is that's not a goal in itself, right? Yeah, it's a tool to get to the final destination, and not a destination in itself.
but it feels sometimes that many do it like that. Like that's the goal. And all the KPIs that they are trying to optimize are just in order to please the shareholders to the next round. And they're like, you're in the round M or N already and you haven't proved your business.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then in terms of entrepreneurship, I mean, there are countries that are more known for that, for giving the tools and to having this entrepreneurial spirit. Like, for example, United States and the Silicon Valley, like very known for that. Or even though I think in United States, they talk a lot that people, when someone says, I want to open a business or I want to start something, people say, go for it. And in Germany, it's a very different mentality, right?
Oh yeah, like I mean, growing up with German, my dad was always very supportive, and he actually also said once, like, I do regret that I didn't, start my own thing in Hong Kong. So, but like knowing relatives, like they all knew what I do, right? But it's always like nobody was exactly like encouraging or asking questions, and I always got nobody never ever told me, but like it did always feel a little bit like, oh, that's cool what you do, nice job, like a little bit like condescending and like, oh, at some point you'll get a real job kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So I do, but that's my relatives, like from the countryside, from the Black Forest, so. But I do feel like it is given less status, I would say, as like in society as like, let's say in the United States.
Yeah. Here is a lot of like, oh, it works at Daimler, it works at Henkel or stuff like that. Like.
Exactly. But having said that, though, like I mean, I built like my business here in Berlin, and there are, of course, like bureaucratic stuff where you're just like, oh, like going to the notary all the time for an address change, like going to the notary, or having all these, like, there are thousands of how do you call them, like support, subsidies, but like applying for them, you need a consultant in itself because it's so complicated.
Oh, okay.
And all the proof you have to bring. Like, I get why they want it, right? But like it's a lot like we had a subsidy where we got like subsidy for the salary of an employee of ours, and it's just the amount of time that we spent, the amount of paperwork that we had to do, and this amount of paperwork that we knew they were doing, like it was a total of 20,000 euros, I think. Like, no, sorry, 10,000 euros. Like, I could imagine that, like, if you calculate all the salaries all the time that was spent on working on that thing, like, I'm not sure if the government got their return on investment back, or if it all was eaten up by the administration.
Yeah, 100%.
Having said that, though, like I do think that in Germany, it's still a great place to start up, right? Like for all its faults with the bureaucracy and stuff, it's still like, there are subsidies out there for like young founders who don't come from a rich background, that can, like they're called Exist-Stipendium, Berliner Gründerstipendium. There are private incubators out there that, just give you money because you have an idea, so you can pay rent and dinner. Like there are a lot of institutions and places that help you start up, even if you don't have the means, like from your family or your savings. So I would still say, like, I'm very thankful for like the place where I am and that I built my business here, because there are still a lot of pros to and of course, like it's still, for all the things that we read about the German economy, like stagnating and stuff, it's still the third largest economy in the world. I mean, and the EU being, okay, the whole of EU being also the third, but like it's still one of the largest economic zones in the world. So there's definitely still, business to be made here.
Have you seen a decrease in the amount of business that are being funded by investors in the last couple of years?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah. But like that's worldwide. Because the interest rates are just so high. So VCs or just in general angel investors, it's a tough hurdle to cross if your bank gives you 5% on your deposit.
Yeah, okay.
So achieving
safe money, right?
achieving higher than 5% on risky business.
Yeah.
Like you have to be very good at investing and picking out the companies to be able to and that's why a lot of like funding dried up. So that's why you have all these rounds of layoffs in the tech world, right? Like all these rounds of layoffs that you've surely seen.
Yeah.
It's because they can't get new funding, right? So they all have to get profitable. And I'm sure like companies or that you've worked or heard of like that are saying like, oh, we have to get profitable now.
Exactly. Before it was not the goal. It was like growth, but growing users, sales, but no matter how much you lose per sale, just report more sales. And then suddenly we need to
be profitable.
Be profitable. Like, oh, okay. Now,
how do we do that?
How do we do that? Before that, it felt like a game. Actually, like let's just play. We have an internet company, and it's because I never in the companies where I was working before, I never pay attention how much money we were losing. I mean, I knew we were losing, but somehow there was always money, right? For Christmas party and summer party and new computers. I was like, all right, there's always money. And then suddenly I started to see in many others, they're doing layoffs, and now every company wants real profits.
Yeah, exactly.
They require them to become grown-ups.
Yeah.
And it's a course correction for a lot of companies, right? And a lot of companies didn't make it or are not making it. But like the VCs are just in general, like money is not so loose anymore if you can get so much money from the bank, like with it sitting on the bank.
Yeah.
Interesting. But you kept your company small, right? Always. You never went on the crazy growth.
We tried. So, I mean, we did raise money back in 2018, a total of 5 million. But I actually left the company in 2018. And I moved to, so me and my co-founder, basically, we didn't have, like, strategically, we had some different opinions.
Okay.
But we like basically shook hands and decided it was the best that we don't continue together. So that's a completely different topic.
Okay.
But I moved to Amsterdam, actually, and lived there for 4 years.
What did you do there?
I worked at a different company. Worked at a different startup. We did like movings, so moving house.
Okay.
And you could book a moving company through our platform.
Okay, like what's the other one that exists?
Movinga. Yeah. But different. Like it was only more of a middleman. It wasn't less of, because Movinga got paid by the customer directly.
Okay.
We just connected.
Do the connection.
We just did the connection. But yeah, no, so after 4 years, that was also during COVID, basically we started like buying other companies, which was really cool and really like it's successful, the strategy right now. But like but for me personally, it was like, hey, like this is kind of like a banker's job, and I'm not like I did finance and I loved to build the first models, but it's not exactly what I want to do long term. So what I did was I spoke to them, and like I started freelancing on the side while I was like, phasing out of the company and doing a lot of like marketing and interim CMO jobs. But then I got back in touch with our old investors. Okay. And they asked me like, oh yeah, so what are you doing right now?
Okay.
Because not my co-founder, but he left in the meantime as well. It was a bit of a telenovela.
Okay.
but like then a new CEO came, but he left till the end of 2021. So I came back beginning of 2022.
Oh, like Steve Jobs.
Well, yeah.
Much smaller and much more niche.
Yeah, okay.
But so basically, and that's also when Roman and Allah, our back then senior developer and now CTO, Roman being our CMO now, came back as well.
Okay.
And we started at Wundertax, we started to like clean up the company. But to answer your question, basically we tried to then like grow and do the whole VC game, but but like other competitors raised more money than us, right? We have competitors, the big green one, that raised much more money than us, and they went on, a huge spending spree. They're doing a good job. I don't have anything really bad to say about them, but they had a different strategy from the beginning, right? Like they started out with making it a beautiful design, whilst we were, doing the MVP approach, like, and expanding to other target groups. So our investors loved us because we were so scrappy startup, iterative. And that other competitor, they had from the beginning a beautiful design. So they had a crazy, impressive American investor at the beginning, and then they just raised more, and they raised a total of 330 million euros.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know why you need so much money
for Christmas parties and summer parties.
I mean, they had a huge round of layoffs as well, and we never had that huge round of layoffs. So we're 20 people.
Yeah.
And from the beginning of 2022, like, we could have still started like, okay, let's get some more money. Let's try to do the whole growth thing. But like, we were always like, okay, well, we've got a good thing going here, right? We have cool developers. We have a small team. And you guys all, I guess every listener knows, like, the larger a team gets, the less efficient it gets, right? So our philosophy was very much like, okay, let's keep our team small, right? Let's keep it small, and let's try to do a lot of things ourselves, be more cost efficient, be more, also effective in our output.
I mean, at the end, that's what a business is about, right? The biggest outcome with a less amount of resources,
exactly.
right?
Yeah. Well, that's now. 2021, when it felt like a game, it was about cracking the high score.
It felt like before, like you said, like a metric of success for a company was how much money did you raise and how many employees do you have?
Exactly.
It's like we are 200 people. It's like, yeah, but what are they doing, right?
Exactly. And now for us, it's really, it's funny because like one of our investors, they were like, because of course the whole telenovela, the other competitor and stuff like that, they were very much like, well, it's a profitable company. It's cool, but like, we don't have that much hope anymore. And then now, like, after it all changed, like we're like kind of like, we don't have to worry about you. Good job, guys. Like, kind of, that's more the mentality.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we came back in 2022 and basically also, like, got rid of a lot of costs. We had a huge expensive office, so we moved into a small co-working space. We also tried to automate much more than before, so that we can like focus on like features and not being busy with some back-end stuff. So we did a lot of that automation. We're bringing out a new app this like hopefully in a month. Like, let's see.
Cool. Cool.
So Roman might also be working on the Spanish thing, but we're just trying to be the keeping that scrappy startup mentality, and at the same time being profitable, and it's a lot of fun. It's
I mean, I feel, for example, the guy from Telegram. I mean, I think they also run the whole company with 20 people.
Oh,
yeah, like super small.
Also, Match.com. They work with 10 people or something like that.
It's crazy,
and it's crazy how much money they do, and it's like.
Yeah. And for example, like the guy from Telegram, he said, I'm the only product manager. So, and I do the hiring. Maybe he overworks himself, but he says, okay, I keep everything. Like, we don't need 200 developers. I just need 20 good developers, and that's it. And myself. And that's what Twitter, also someone, I think, questioned Twitter about, like, why do you need all of these people, right? Was the same thing. What is Twitter doing? Just
but at the same time, that guy was asking for new features that were impossible to build.
But the founder from Telegram, because I was listening to this interview that he does with, who is this guy who was in Fox News before?
Tucker Carlson?
Yes. He interviewed the founder of Telegram recently, and then he was asking, hey, what about Twittering? And then the guy from Telegram, he said, I talk with how's it going? Jack Dorsey.
Yeah.
Back then, and I asked him, "You can do this whole thing also with 50 people."
Yeah.
And then he said, and Jack Dorsey, he answered me, "Yeah, I know, but investors will freak out if I just starting to lay off people."
Yeah.
That's why he answered.
Okay.
But he's himself. He says that he admitted, "Yeah, I know I can run this whole thing with 50, but."
No, exactly. Like, and it's also the same thing for us. Like 3 junior developers versus 1 senior developer.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of the times the senior developer wins, right? Like, so, but does the senior developer cost 3 times more? Probably not. And it's more, and of course, like having larger the business is, the more waste it brings, like just coordination and talking and,
and applies, I think, for every position, maybe, right? Like I've heard that a lot from developers' perspective. Like they say, as senior developers, it's not like 2 or 3 times more efficient than a junior. It's like 10 or 20 times more efficient than a junior. So it's like exponential what they can do. I imagine that also for people in marketing or in other position in finances or whatever, it's the same thing,
Absolutely.
Right?
And I think everyone who starts a company with limited means, after getting funding, you always have to ask yourself, like, what's the next feature that brings you to the North Star, as they like to call it.
Yeah.
Or the next action, the next channel.
In terms of building a business or raising a capital, for non-EU founders or founders who are with people of color or female, have you seen any kind of like a bias from investors or a misrepresentation from this kind of people in the scene?
I mean, if you look at the numbers, it's very obvious that it's skewed towards male white founders, definitely. Like, I mean, that's especially the gender is a huge topic. That's the funding dollars, the funding amounts go mostly to all male teams, and all female teams are significant minority. But also people of color is like, you don't, like, I mean, I don't have any numbers for that, so please don't quote me, but like it definitely also feels like underrepresented. But having said that though, there are right now a lot of initiatives like working against that topic, like, I mean, against those trends, against those biases. So there are right now, like, programs of VCs or programs, or like a special VCs or investment focuses that are only for people with migrant background, that are only for people like female founders as well. There are lots of like these accelerators. So stuff is definitely happening in that area. I mean, there's this organization called Two Hearts. They just did a huge press release saying like they're setting up something to fund more people with migrant backgrounds. Because I mean, it is, I would say, like, if you don't have the connections like we have at WHU, frankly speaking, like, it is difficult to start from zero here.
When you raise capital, it was through the network from the WHU?
Not solely, no.
Okay.
But it was one part where you, like, it's a starting point. Yeah.
And also I imagine like the friends and the people where you're studying
they know people.
They know people. All their parents know someone, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So coming like in as a, let's say, non-EU person who wants to found a company, like, it is more difficult. I'm not going to say it isn't. I'm not going to say it's a walk in the park and it's just as easy. Just pull yourself up. But there are resources. There are a lot of resources by the German government, by like different subsidies, different scholarships. There are private organizations and VCs that targets, these underrepresented founder groups. And I think that's a great thing, right? Like, it's exactly what we need in Germany, and it's just also the right thing to do.
Yeah. I think so, and that gives hope, so hopefully for some of the listeners as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, You're an expert in taxes, right?
Yeah.
Tell me 3 things that normal people doesn't know about the tax return.
Well, first of all, a common misconception is that if you don't have to do it, you shouldn't do it. Or you don't like. A lot of people, I think our biggest, what do I mean with that? Our biggest competitor is laziness, or fear.
Okay,
Fear is a crazy thing, because people are like, oh, if I do something wrong, then I'm doing tax evasion, and that's definitely not it, right? Like, or the laziness being like, I don't have to, there's nothing to submit anyway, so I'm not getting anything back. That's definitely a huge misconception. Always do your taxes. It makes sense most of the time in Germany.
What can you get back, or what can you deduct? I mean, I know that you can deduct like education. You said like your cost of educations.
Yeah.
What else is there that a lot of people might not know that is very easy to do?
Yeah. So one thing that always gets you money back is one of these beautiful other words in German, die Nebenkostenabrechnung. So if you're a tenant, if you're a tenant, you get every year you get a calculation by your landlord with all the costs for, maintenance, like building for the building, for water, for reparations around the house. If you don't, like, take care of it, because then your landlord is doing some shady stuff. But like, in that calculation, there are lots of things, especially the services, such as, like, if you live in an apartment complex and they have a cleaner, that cleaning costs, that is, percentage wise put onto your bill, you can deduct that from your taxes, and that goes directly off of your gross salary. So you always get money back for that.
Okay. So it means like, because you pay the kalte Miete, and then there's the warm Miete, and the difference between the cold and warm are this Nebenkosten most of the time. So meaning that is what we can deduct?
Partially, yeah. So the service parts of those. So if it's like maintenance, or if it's cleaning, repairs, but like, let's say they buy a new valve or something, that's not deductible. But like the services around it, those are all deductible.
Ah, okay.
So if you also in your house itself, so if you hire a cleaning lady or a cleaning man, you can deduct that from your taxes. Actually, you have to get an invoice, of course, so you can't do it under the table. But those you can deduct from your taxes as well.
Okay.
So another thing that people don't really know is, if you had, let's say, a month or even a week of time in between two jobs, you normally always get something back. Because how it works is, you get like a monthly salary slip, right? Yeah. So the monthly salary slip, let's say you earn 2,000 euros that month. Normally, how it works is the the payroll office takes that times 12 and says you earn 24,000 euros per year, and then takes the tax rate of that divides that by 12, and that's the taxes you pay for that month, right? But let's say you do that, and every month you get whatever you get taxed for 24,000. In December, you don't work. Yeah, that means you actually only earned 22,000, right? In the 11 months before that, it taxed you based on 24,000, but you only earned 22,000. So you should only be taxed on 22,000, and that's the difference that you get back.
Yeah, we see those things for people that moves to Germany. For instance, I moved in August. And I pay the taxes.
You get everything back.
I paid the taxes of as if I were working the whole year.
Exactly.
Which means I pay taxes for 12 months, and I only work 6.
Yeah.
So Yeah, I did not know that.
Yeah, you should get something juicy if you do that. After all of these years living in Germany, do you feel German, or what do you feel, or how do you identify yourself?
That's always a good question. I do feel German, yes. I also feel for me, it's really tough because, this is, again, a completely different episode, but also with Taiwanese. My mom being, born in Taiwan, but my grandparents being from China, like during the Cultural Revolution, they went over. So I also feel a lot of, and growing up in Hong Kong, being born in Hong Kong, also the political changes that have been going on in Hong Kong over the last years, I do feel like a connection of, and identity towards China, Taiwan, and Hong Kong, because it's a very complex topic as well.
So during the protests that were going on in Hong Kong, you felt some sort of like empathy of what was going on there?
Yeah, of course. I did feel empathy towards the people protesting that. I have quite a lot of opinions on the whole process there.
Yeah.
But yes, of course, it's not the Hong Kong that I grew up in. It does have a lot of changes, but it's also like, on the other hand, there were lots of, protests where people were waving the British colonial flag, where I was also growing up, I was British, there were some British kids that said, we own this place. They literally said yeah, no, this place is owned by us. That kind of things, right?
Okay.
And the fact is that, Portugal, for instance, every Macanese person born before 1999 has a Portuguese passport. And in Hong Kong, you had this British national overseas, which was like a second-class passport, with which you couldn't even live in the UK.
Yeah, okay.
And now suddenly, to piss China off, they suddenly allow people, the few people that are left that have this passport, to have a path to citizenship, feels a bit too little too late.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's a very complex issue. And I feel German, yes, but I also feel Taiwanese, Chinese, Hong Kong.
I think that part of the identity is more complex, I guess, right? Between Hong Kong, China, Taiwan, right?
Yes, of course. And I do not believe in deciding. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's I think the two hearts thing is quite a nice picture of it, right? So yeah, no, I do feel German, yes. I love this country.
Yeah. Here's where you have had already your big career and big success.
Well, it has its drawbacks, it has its faults, it has its its shortcomings, but I do think it's part of my identity.
Do you see yourself in Germany your whole life?
Not necessarily. I think I'm pretty flexible on that issue. I also moved to Amsterdam for 4 years. I could imagine moving back to Hong Kong for a few years, or even go to China, or even my girlfriend is from Serbia, or she grew up in Germany, but her parents are from Serbia. So also I just came back from there. I was there for a few weeks. So also going there for a while, to Latin America.
Yeah, why not? One last one. If you could give an advice to that Daniel that moved when he was 18, what advice would you give him with the knowledge that you have today?
Don't be so hard on yourself, and take it a bit more easy. Back then, part of the pressure was also I wanted to study with 18 and go into the world and have your experiences. But I do think that you're not old that fast, right? Life is quite long. And you need to take your time and do the things you want to do, but not at the sake of your health, of stress, of relations, etc. So I think I mean, I don't want to give like a motivational talk and say like, you know, like, take it by, you know, take every opportunity that you can or whatever, like, or you work on your grind set. But no, like, take it easy. I think people are sometimes a bit too harsh on themselves.
Well, I appreciate that you have come here to the podcast. Thanks for sharing your story. I hope we see each other again soon.
Yes, absolutely. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for coming.
And if you guys want to reach out to me, please feel free to write me on LinkedIn, write us at Wundertax if you have any questions. We're happy to help.
All right. Thank you for everything. Thank you for coming, Daniel Hanemann. If you got value today, I would love to hear your feedback in the comment section. Don't forget, rate, review, and like this video. Have no idea how much it will help.
We can't wait to connect with you in future episodes.
This was the Guten Tag podcast. My name is Luardo.
And I'm Benji.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Auf Wiedersehen.
This is the Guten Tag podcast. Oh, this is the Guten Tag podcast.